Hey there, this is Renessa Boley Layne, and welcome to another conversation on creating your perfect work. If you follow me, then you know it is my life's mission to equip you to discover, design, and get highly paid to do work you love, whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing your big idea to life. So I'm just kind of fired up about today's conversation because we're going to be talking about women helping women. And you're going to be invited to join a movement, to bring your career, your business, your leadership dreams to life. But it's not just about the scraping and the toiling and the striving and all of that. It's really about how do we as women support one another with our intentions, with our goals, to open doors, to make dreams come true, to create opportunities for each other. And so the way that many of us are accustomed to succeeding and building and all of that, this conversation is going to challenge us and also hopefully give us a whole new paradigm on how we think about our own success and also how we think about our responsibility to helping the next woman get where they need to go. And I really hope that it sets such a great foundation of freedom, of openness, of vulnerability, but also of excitement and a little more ease and flow as we begin to redesign our success to get more of what we want. And so the dynamic woman that is sharing the screen with me today is no other than Dr. Nancy O'Reilly. And I'm going to give you a little bit snippet of who she is, although my little bio won't do it any justice because the woman is bad. But Dr. O'Reilly is an international philanthropist. She's a trailblazer by every stretch of the word for women's empowerment. And she really has this belief about women supporting women. She is a successful author. She's an educator. She is a founder of Women Connect4Good, Inc., which is a 501(c) foundation that helps support national and international charities that advance women and girls. She's got lots of stuff going on, but I'm gonna pick up the stuff that's really, really great. In 2019, she actually wrote a book called In This Together, How Successful Women Support Each Other in Business and Life. And I've read that book, highly recommend it. We're gonna be talking about pieces of that in this conversation. But she also launched the Lift Women Up to complement a documentary set to air on PBS that features her work championing women's equality and advancement. There's lots that I can say about Nancy. There's award after award after award, but here is what I admire most. I admire Nancy because she's a walking example of what it means to elevate women. Like, it's refreshing when you hear women that walk their talk, they do their thing. She puts in the time, she puts in her expertise and her philanthropy around equipping women to succeed. And her life is a lesson, and it's a challenge for us all to pick up the mantle, to do our parts and figure out how to elevate each other, both in our communities, in our businesses, and in the world around us. And so with that, I'm honored to have you. I'm looking forward to diving in with you, and I just want to welcome you. So thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm thrilled. I want to say a few things about you, because again, what Women Connect for Good is, it's about supporting and collaborating and connecting. But I went in and I researched you a little bit too. So you're an amazing person as well. And you know what? I wish more people understood what you're talking about, that our passion should be our work and our work should be our passion. And I think, COVID has given us an opportunity to maybe think about those things more. What really, really brings you joy? What really, really brings you happiness? They say over 50% of the workforce really don't like their jobs.
Yeah.
Really aren't happy with what they do. But you are a person who is now walking the talk and doing all the above, which is, again, you realized what you were doing was not making you happy. So you redesigned yourself. Yeah. And I think that's what we've got to remember. Even in midstream, you can turn around and you can go a different direction. There's absolutely, I love your book. It's, what was it? Let's see, Fast Lane, Wrong Lane. I really like that. But what I do a video almost every day, which basically I just talk about different things, gratitude, whatever's on my mind. But I also do podcasts as well. But one of the things I always end the conversation is that you're unique and you're special, and there's no one like you in the whole wide world. Yeah. that's who you are. And that's what everyone should remember. There's nobody like you or me in the whole wide world. So, all right, let's do it.
Thank you. So if y'all are listening, you're unique and you're special, and there is nobody else like you.
Nobody.
We did it right there.
One of a kind.
Because this interview series is around, creating your perfect work, I always like to ask this question because I want the audience to see and hear and feel what perfect work looks like. And I don't want folks to get caught up thinking that perfect work is about perfection. It's not about perfection. It's not without challenge. It's not without risk. It's not without all of that. Perfect work is really the career business that you know without a doubt that you are meant to do, the contributions you're meant to make, the mountain you're meant to climb. And the work that you're doing, Nancy, now, how do you know that it is aligned to your perfect work?
Well, I think if we all look at ourselves personally, I mean, if we really go deep and we look at that, start to look at the authentic self. In fact, first we have to find that authentic self, that voice within, is that, I had to go back. I mean, I had to begin. Mm-hmm. And first of all, I really didn't like being a girl. I saw that, at least I felt when I was growing up, that boys were more valued. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that was the most important thing to do, was to really come to terms with being a girl. Mm-hmm. And with becoming a girl, I became the ultimate tomboy, which was the opposite. And I spent most of my time sports, playing with boys. They didn't come to date me. They came because I was a good kickball, baseball player, mm-hmm. and I was good. Mm-hmm. But, love and marriage and baby carriage, I started to have my family. And for the oddest reason, I never thought I'd have a girl. Well, really? My first child was a girl. Mm-hmm. And I thought, geez, what do I do with this little girl? I was still having trouble with my own value. Yeah, and then my second daughter came along, and then followed by that was my third daughter. So, God, she has a wonderful sense of humor. And I say that with tongue in cheek a little bit, but I had to really come to terms with being a woman. I had to, and I've said this over and over again, I had to empower myself first before I could ever help any other woman. So finding my value, finding my voice was extremely important. And along the way, I began to identify other women who did not have that, who also said they felt invisible. Mm-hmm. Invisible.
Interesting.
So it's finding a voice and making sure that you're heard and understood.
Yeah. You mentioned, since you talked about the three girls, when I read your book, you talk about, having your first child, being a young mother, going to night school, being a young wife, all of that. And you say in your book that there was a great sense of loneliness and isolation at that time. And I think there's a lot of women who can probably relate to that. Tell us more about what you meant. Yeah, and then what decisions you made as a result of that.
Absolutely. And again, I think that was part of the journey and the path that we put ourselves on. I wanted to be educated. Mm-hmm. I wanted to become a psychologist. I wanted to become a therapist. I wanted to help in the world. But it was interesting as I was, and I was studying. I had a child, and I was trying to work through school, and I was even working part-time. I really didn't feel I had a lot of support from other women. In fact, when I would tell women about what I was doing, it was sometimes as if, I wasn't in competition with them, but it was as if sometimes instead of someone saying, fantastic, that is absolutely wonderful what you're doing, I sometimes got the opposite, which was, you're so competitive. Why are you always working so hard? And it didn't feel like I was being supported by other women. All they had to do was say, great, fantastic. So that loneliness, I think, happens with a lot of women, especially if they're high achieving women. They're women that really want to get ahead, like yourself, and many women that are listening, that when you do really strive to be your very best, or strive to do what you really want to do, sometimes women are uncomfortable with that, and really sometimes in some ways rejected. I felt rejected.
Wow.
So the one thing I'm trying to do is to help people, and I'm finding that I'm getting rejected.
Yeah. So I'm glad, that you said it, because there's a lot of women who can relate to that sense of not feeling supported. Now, in some cases, we put ourselves out there and we don't get the support. We get the pushback. We get the, all that.
Yeah.
And then there are those of us who have grown up in cultures or environments where, you do it on your own. I'm a military kid. I'm an only child. I've learned to adapt, to different situations. But that sense of community, that's been something that I've had to really learn how to build, to cultivate, because it is a cult. It's a cult, like it's active, it's intentional, but also learning how to need it, right? And I just don't think a lot of us are equipped and designed and really taught how to work in community. And
well,
so.
Yeah, let me jump in there because, again, this is really the most important piece is what, as I was going through this process and this journey and feeling alone, it was important to find like-minded women, like-minded people that felt the same way. And so along the journey, I was looking for other women who had similar needs. And of course, there were many women as I was going to school and working on my doctorate as well. But that again, you start to talk and you start to communicate. And we started asking how we could help each other.
Mm-hmm.
And this was something that became so very, very powerful. We call it, in fact, this group of women, I still get together every year for a luncheon, and we call ourselves the Psych Sisters because we all got our doctorate in psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And so we call ourselves the Psych Sisters. But without the support of these women, and these like-minded women in my life, I think I would have struggled even more so than I already was. So building a community, and that's what Women Connect for Good is, building a community of like-minded women who understand that we have to ask for help.
Yeah.
Give it, but also ask for it.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that specifically around giving and asking in a moment. But let's talk a little bit about just perspective and how, because you've been in the game for a long time and you've had the privilege of being able to interact with women from all different backgrounds and all different ways. But a common thread, and you write this in your book, you say that we often doubt ourselves, our qualifications, our abilities, our vision, and our right to lead.
Right.
Tell us more about that and how that shows up in critical moments, especially as folks are thinking about redesigning their success or stepping out into something big. Like, where does this come into play?
Okay, let me give you an example because I think this kind of begins the thinking of women especially. Well, first of all, women, we look at another woman, and I'm speaking of myself and I'm speaking about this journey. We look at another woman. I would look at you right now and I would see you beautiful, you're dressed beautifully, you're educated, you're smart. Somehow I think things have been easy for you. It's amazing what women don't ask and don't know. But again, if I said to you, Renessa, I really love that dress. That is an absolutely beautiful blue, wonderful dress. I love your jewelry, your hair. And women oftentimes will say, oh, this old thing.
Yeah.
We don't take compliments well. We don't toot our horns. I call it tooting our horn.
Yeah.
But instead of saying, well, thank you. I love this dress. This color is really good on me. And but women have, again, it's that permission. It's permission that we haven't been given or don't give ourselves to give, to toot our horns, to have that self-esteem, but permission to really use our voices and to be good leaders.
And so where do you find the innate sense of doubt and unbelief and all of that coming from? Because again, the women that are listening in on this series, they're all driven, they're all high achieving, they're at different spectrums of the game, but everybody can point to something that they've achieved. Like, these are women who are doing things that are forced for good, and yet it's remarkable how many folks, if you were to take a poll and ask them, do you feel powerful, do you feel successful, do you feel, doesn't matter what the title is, most will come back with a story as to why I'm not there yet or not enough or what have you.
Well, there's a saying, you can't be what you can't see. You can't be what you can't read about. You can't be what you see, hear, and what goes on in the world. And I think the media, for women especially, and I talk about this a little bit, is that what we see is that we're supposed to be smarter, I mean, we're supposed to be prettier, thinner, more beautiful. And so women have learned somewhere along the line to doubt themselves, to doubt their credibility, to doubt who they are. And so again, that goes back to, how am I going to support you if I can't support myself?
Okay.
How am I going to feel good about you as a woman if I can't feel good about myself as a woman?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the bias that we often I talk about in the book, which is, we all have biases. We come out of the womb with a bias. We look at other people. We make judgments regarding people in the first 5 seconds that we see them. We're making judgments, which will probably take many, many times in seeing this person several times to reverse those
That's
thoughts.
So true. That's so true.
So we have to be careful what we think. We have to be careful what we read and like I said, women cannot become what they can't see and what they don't know. So this is why this is so important, that we begin to show more and more of ourselves and share more and more of ourselves, because we all have the same biases and the same concerns and the same worries. And so if we talk about them and share them, anything is possible.
No, I think it's true. It's interesting because there's a quote that often says that we compare someone else's, we compare our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, right? And to your point, I can look at you or you can look at me and you make this a judgment or this case around what you think this person's life is like, what you think, what their success looks or feels like. And 9 times out of 10, you have no idea what they have gone through, crawled through, struggled through.
Well, when I do a conversation, I'd love to do one with you when the next, get you scheduled for a podcast with me for conversations with Dr. Nancy. But the first thing I ask people, tell me your story. Mm-hmm. Tell me how you got to be you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most valuable thing that we as women can do, is when we really start to communicate who we are. And again, we can talk about our accomplishments, but we also, when we talk about the journey and where we've come from to become who we are, then there's always a commonality. There's always something that will join us, no matter who we are, our age, our color, our religion. There's always something that we can join with one another.
Yeah. And so the reason, folks, that for those of you who are listening, the reason why we're even starting with this part of the conversation is because no matter how accomplished you are, when you're getting to the place where you're trying to create the next level of perfect work for you, it's always outside of a comfort zone. You're always pioneering. It's always something you've never done before, even if it looks tangentially like something you've got expertise in doing. And when you step up into that place, all of these insecurities come into play, independent of how successful you may have been. And I was interviewing Gloria Felt, and I'm mentioning Gloria because I know Dr. Nancy knows Gloria, and actually Gloria introduced me to Dr. Nancy. And I remember Gloria was the former president of Planned Parenthood, and after just a storied career of years and years and years, decades in that space, she said when she gave up that role and now it was time for her to do something different, she'd lost herself. She was like, there was an identity that was so attached to that particular role, and people would look at her and be like, this woman is amazing, like she's done this and that. And you have no idea the level of insecurity that rose up when she was trying to redesign, who Gloria Felt version 3.0 was going to look like. And she shares her story in that interview, and if you guys definitely want to tap into that one. But the point is, when we get to this place, these questions of doubts and vision, and am I enough? I was enough for that, but am I really enough for this? It comes in for all of us. And so we're setting the stage to kind of dismantle some of these things so we can then move in to how do you rebuild you, and then how do you help other women rebuild themselves as well.
Well, one of the things I think I can throw in really quickly, because I think it's very important. In fact, Gloria and I have talked about this a lot. We have to get used to being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And this is something that women don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, we don't like to be disliked, but secondly, we don't like to be uncomfortable. And no one gets anywhere without some being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And, there is no perfect road. There is no perfect solution. So again, I think, if you look at some of the most successful people, the school of hard knocks, they've many times failed. Sometimes our failures can be our successes, because we learn so much from those. And like I said, Gloria, here she had this wonderful career with Planned Parenthood. She leaves and then she says to herself, okay, where's my identity? But what's going on during that process that's preventing her from continuing to grow in self-esteem, to grow into self-confidence, and to know that she is valued, whatever she's doing, and has that capability to do so much more.
Yeah. You know what? Let's talk a little bit about leadership and feminine leadership. And the reason why I want to talk about leadership, because it doesn't matter if you're leading a company or aspire to lead a company, you're leading a team, whether it's big or small, or if you're simply leading to pursuit of your perfect work, it's all leadership in some way. And so I want to talk about feminine leadership, because there's feminine leadership has become all the buzz. And there's definitely a much more attention given to the differences in how men and women lead in their traits. And I think in the entrepreneurial space, at least, it's been so much more well received, and perhaps it's because it's your business. You choose your clients, you do it kind of the way you want to do it. But I find sometimes in the career space, feminine leadership can be a bit of a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, women want to lead how they want to lead. And then on the other hand, some of those traits that are considered feminine are seen as being weaknesses, or they're seen as lacking in power. Talk a little bit about your perception around feminine leadership, and what some of those qualities are. And then we'll talk a little bit later about how they're perceived. But I kind of want people to start to get a sense for how that's defined.
Okay, well, let's start. Let's just go to the core then and talk about vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And vulnerability is actually considered a feminine trait, but it's now being perceived as something more and more valuable. Mm-hmm. Because when we're actually I think what we're going to see to come out of COVID is more and more empathy. More and more people are going to be really talking about what's important, and relationship building is part of that. And that's where women, I think, have the greatest value as far as great communication skills. But when we share our vulnerability and we ask for what we need and we ask for help, some amazing things happen. And that is seen more and more as a feminine trait. But again, we're also relationship builders. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, I think there's too many women who have come up through the ranks in corporations who did not have the visual that you can't see what you can't be. Yeah. You can't be what you can't see. But they're taking on masculine traits and taking on more aggressive roles where it's really not necessary. So it's a matter of taking off the Superwoman t-shirt underneath there and putting it away, but really starting to develop those relationships. You know what, Gloria talks about this too, the pie. There's a lot of pieces to the pie. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing, if you're working with someone and there's something that you can't do, but they can do, why wouldn't you want them to have a piece of the pie? So it's really about getting to a point where it's not there's nothing wrong with competition as long as it's healthy, as long as people know what the score is, more or less, but that this pie is huge and it's infinite, and there's never burned bridges. There's always going to be a time in a company, and of course, and also emulating. I know that there's people that you've seen growing up that you want to emulate. In fact, probably already have. And the same thing with me. I saw a woman, or I saw someone I really liked the way she managed, she led, and you ask her for help. You emulate them and say, how did you get to be who you are? What works for you? Mm-hmm. And so it's that vulnerability, but it's also that asking for what you need and and again, you can always turn around and say, how can I help you?
Yeah. So I want to kind of unpack this point a little bit, because there are certain qualities that are traditionally feminine, and I don't want to put every woman in every bucket, nor am I saying that if you come to the table more masculine, that there's something with a more masculine energy, that there's anything wrong with that either, because there's not. But there are certain qualities, whether you mentioned empathy, you mentioned vulnerability. I think women have an ability to see other people's point of view, to, as you would say, step into their shoes, those kinds of things. How do you trust that who you are and how you're showing up doesn't get perceived as a weakness, such that you get pigeonholed into a service role or kind of the hospitality role of in your company, that kind of thing? Because again, the trait is powerful, but yet if it's not perceived and valued as being powerful, then you get marginalized or pigeonholed, and you're not seen as someone who can really play the game at a high level. So how do you balance that and still be authentically who you might be?
Yeah. Well, there's the power over, which sometimes can be considered the masculine leadership model, and then there's the power to, which can be considered the female model. And I think this is something that women have to get comfortable with. They have to get comfortable with the fact that they do have talents, they do have abilities. And of course, you know, one of the best ways, especially in women in corporations and companies, is that you start to find your mentors, your sponsors, those in the company that you can, again, you know, share in that leadership with, but also start to build your case, so to speak. You know, if someone brings up in a meeting, and I say you bring up a great idea in a meeting and it's ignored, and then a male counterpart brings up the same message or same idea, and they think it's a great idea. If you have a sponsor or an ally in that meeting or that discussion, then they can always support you. So I think this is where women become extremely talented, is learning the culture, understanding the culture of the company, and then finding ways to get sponsors, mentors, and ways to continue to evolve in that leadership role.
Yeah. You mentioned something in your book. There's a story that you recalled in the book. And I'm harping on this whole idea of feminine leadership. I'm harping on this idea of kind of understanding who you are a little bit, because I want folks to recognize that in redesigning your success, it's not about redesigning who you are. Yeah. You know, and I want there to be a certain level of appreciation for who you are and what you bring to the table, so that we can build on that, as opposed to showing up inauthentically and trying to build on sand. So in your book, you recount this story about Kate Montana's and the story about a shaman. And I don't want to steal the thunder. I want to let you tell the story, because I thought it was really, really profound in helping women to see their value in leadership and their value at the table.
Yeah. Well, the shaman tells a story about actually it was a pretty gender, I guess the tribe was pretty, you know, it was pretty tight and it was pretty close. Men and women had different jobs, but it was a very close community. But the men would go out and hunt, and they would hunt, and they would hunt, and they would hunt, and they would continue to hunt until there was nothing left to hunt. Mm-hmm. And so the shaman said, you know, she's telling the story, the story's being told. And she said, in our tribe, the women would have said, stop, don't keep hunting. In other words, the point is that somebody has to understand to stop and to know what's really where the value is for the tribe, the overall good of the community. Mm-hmm. So they, instead of keep going, stop. Just tell them to stop. Mm-hmm. And we need to do that sometimes. Just tell people to stop what works and what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why that story, and I encourage folks, if you're listening, to actually get the book. But the reason that story was powerful to me is because, yes, there's a beauty in masculine energy. And even as women, we can step up and show up in a masculine space as well. I have an engineering background. It's very masculine in its nature. And I connect very well with men. In fact, I had to grow to learn how to connect with women. And that was actually far more uncomfortable for me in my 20s and 30s and whatnot. But there are elements that women bring to the table. There's intuition. There's ability to understand, you know, what's common good. There's a great ability to negotiate and to understand, you know, elements that we can sometimes not value in ourselves. And so part of the beauty of that story was that no, it's the women oftentimes that dictate when enough is enough. It's the women that dictate when we have overdone whatever it is that we're doing. And so really being able to understand some of those qualities that you bring to the marketplace, to the workplace, into some of those other community and such that when you're stepping into that space, you can step into it with so much more power and certainty around the impact that you bring. And you don't have to be a hammer necessarily to do it, but the gifts that you've been given are so essential in the overall well-being of the group, in the overall success of the company, in the overall prosperity of the bottom line. So that's really what I'd taken from that story and why I thought it was really, really powerful.
Well, and the problem solving, that is key, is that, and I think traditionally that's where women have been in their homes, in their communities. We've been problem solvers.
Yep.
We see the issues, what's going to be better for our children at school, what's going to be better in our communities for our elderly, whatever the population is. Women we're very, very good at seeing the big picture, as well as the minute details that are necessary to solve the problems. And those skills can also be taken into companies and corporations, which are probably going to be more valuable now than they've ever been. If you see a problem and you have a solution and you have a way of taking care of that, run as fast as you can and gather up some other men and women and to take care of that problem.
Yep. So when you're talking about women supporting women, how much of it is about us asking for the help that we need, and how much of it is about us offering the help unsolicited, perhaps, or whatnot, to someone else?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a story, because as I said, Renessa, I have been doing these podcasts for about 15 years now, but this was in the early days, and we'll call her Mary. And Mary had a mission. I'd interviewed her about her book, and of course, her mission was to support other women. And I said, Mary, how can I help you? What are ways that I can help you with your mission and continue to help promote you? It became very, 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 very quiet on the other end of the line. And pretty soon I said, Mary, are you still there?
Hello?
And she went, and this little voice, this sweet little voice said, you mean you want to help me? Wow. And I said, that's exactly what I want you to do. And that really was the beginning of Women Connect4Good Foundation, when I realized such a simple question was, you mean you really want to help me? We recently had a Power Up conference, and Gloria was there and many, many other people. But I had a woman come up to me after the conference was over. It's called the Power Up Conference. But she came up to me and she goes, she says, I'll be honest with you. She said, I've never really been to a conference like this before. She said, but I have never, ever felt better in my entire life. I have never had this much support from other women that I've had here these last few days. And it's so simple. It is so very, very simple that when we just really support one another, it's anything is possible. It's just anything.
Got it. So as a woman who needs the help, what mindset do I need to have going into that? Because it amazes me how many people don't ask more often. And it amazes me how many times when I ask, how can I help you? They don't have an answer. Like, oh, can I get back to you, kind of thing. So how do we as women need to reframe the whole concept of needing help and wanting help, such that we can be effective in actually putting it out there? Because I think for a lot of us, we work entirely too hard, and sometimes it takes things entirely too long to manifest because we don't get the help that we need by just asking. So how do we what are some of those barriers? How do we need to reframe in order to put ourselves in a position to receive?
Yeah. Well, and again, I like to keep things simple, but again, permission It is about permission. You can run ideas by people.
Mm-hmm.
Again, these aren't going to be people that they're allies, they're sponsors within your company, people
Mm-hmm.
that will listen to you, but you can always run ideas by family members, run ideas by different people that you trust, that you feel comfortable with. But first of all, you've got to give yourself permission to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, who gave you permission to change your career? Who said to you, you're not happy, you don't like what you're doing? And they said, well, why don't you change? Why don't you do something different? There had to be somebody in your life. Who was it?
It was the digestive disorder, the chronic fatigue, the low grade depression.
But yours was health.
Yeah,
But there is something that typically will come into our lives that is an opportunity. You can see it as a challenge, but it can also be an opportunity to really make that difference. Yeah, unfortunately, I've also had health issues before and realized that this job was not the job I wanted. It was not fun. It was stressing me out. And you have to listen to people. You have to listen to your body. And it's really about taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
This is what you did. You stopped, you looked around, you said, wait a minute, I'm not taking good care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And your body says, no, you're not. And so we're going to make sure that you do something about it. And so you didn't have a choice, but it's still about a matter of listening and really listening to your gut. I think that's what you had to do. You had to listen to your gut.
I think that's an interesting point, and I never really thought about it that way. And I'll pause on this because my hope is that it'll land with someone else as well. When we think about redesigning our success, whatever that means, whether that means radically changing careers, whether it means, taking the leap and launching a business, whether it's, putting out this mission, there's this feeling sometimes that that's too risky, or it's selfish, or, what's this going to do to my family, or how's this going to affect all of these other folks. But you were talking about this within the context of taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that landed with me, because I do believe that when, not just women, anybody, when you're doing the thing that you are supposed to be doing, that nobody else could do better than you.
Yeah.
That is a form of worship on the one hand, but you are the best version of yourself, or you're giving yourself the opportunity to be the best version of yourself. And so for those of you who might be listening and thinking and knowing that something needs to shift, even if you don't know what it is, there's a piece of self-care that you might want to consider as you start to do the pro and con list, as you start to weigh whether or not this is the right time and all that other kind of stuff. There's an element of self-care that I hadn't quite framed it that way, but I like the way that you framed it, because it makes such a huge difference in your ability to be a great parent, or a greater spouse, or a better sister, or a better friend, because you're lit up by the work that you get to do. And I think there's something really, really powerful about that.
Well, and again, you become the people you spend time with. So look around. Do you have cheerleaders? Do you have coaches? Do you have people that affirm who you are? Where are you on the list of people, places, and things? And women, of course, we tend to, I love this one, because I ride and I'm pretty physically active with the equestrian world. So massages are extremely therapeutic and very valuable. But I'll say, well, I'm going to go get a massage, and people go, oh, you're going to do what? And I go, wait a second, this is therapeutic.
Yeah.
So we as women have to understand that when we take care of ourselves, it's something that we want to teach our daughters, our sons, and other people to do the same. But if I don't feel good and I'm not taking care of me, how can I possibly do anything else, especially to help you in any way, shape, or form? So check it out. Look at your list. Where do you fit on that list? Where are you?
Absolutely.
Where do you fit?
Let's talk about how do we advocate for each other? So we talked a little bit about advocating for ourselves and self-care, whether self-care is the physical care or the actual making decisions where you become a priority in your own success. But now let's talk about how we actually advocate for each other. Like, how do I become the woman who supports another woman?
Well, as we've said, and I'll say it again, it's a movement.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movement. Lift Women Up is a movement, but it's really It's an everyday, it's a habit. It's something that you do every single day of your life. I love Madeleine Albright's statement when she said there's a special place in hell for women who don't support each other. And I truly believe that that is so very, very important. But we advocate by supporting women running for office. You know, we've got some big elections coming up again, so it's supporting women in office, at work, you know, supporting women for leadership roles, leadership positions, you know, allies, sponsors, but we have to do it every day, and it has to become a habit. You know, something that you do every day that you can help another woman, because I guarantee you, you're helping yourself every single time you help another woman.
Why is that? Because lots of people are listening and thinking, well, what's in it for
Why
me?
is that?
Why is it that when you're helping another woman, you're helping yourself? Because I believe that's true, but
Because in any business and any corporation, we know that when women are at top leadership positions, I'm just going to use the example, companies are more successful. And that's because when there's one woman working in a corporation, it triples the number of women that are put into leadership positions, but it also improves the overall success of the company. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. Put five women in a room, and they've got a project. They're going to plan it, they're going to get a budget for it, and they're going to execute it. We've got that ability. We've always had that ability because we've done that in our homes, we've done that in our communities, and we can do it at the greater level and the greater good as well.
Yeah. You know, it's fascinating because I think that some women don't think about how can I support another woman. Like if you're in the friend circle or something like that, sure. But really thinking outside of the box and saying, okay, there are X number of women running for local office. How do I find out what their platforms are, or what they believe in, and how can I, like, actually being very intentional and proactive about being able to support other women.
Yeah.
Within your company, like I don't know how many women think about the one or two that might be at the top of the executive committee, and really thinking, how can I support her to do her job better? She might just be EVP so-and-so, and you might not think anything more of it because you're 2 or 3 rungs down the ladder. But should women be thinking that way, proactively about, okay, I'm in this company, so-and-so is managing director of X. I don't know her personally, but is there something that I should be doing or can be doing to actually advance or make her job easier or whatnot? Again, she doesn't know me from Eve. And so your assertion is we should be thinking about how we support that woman. But I think for a lot of us listening, it didn't even come to mind that.
Well, that's why we have to keep working as hard as we're working right now to make sure that women do understand and see more of us doing that. You know, again, seeing it in action. You know, the last election, a lot of women were voted into leadership positions, a lot of diversity as far as women were elected into positions. So we just have to continue the pay gap, ending poverty, the things that women really understand that we can do something about. But we have to join. We have to become a part of a community. And you've already you've developed that with your viewers right now. But every one of them, there's something they can do today. They can do something today. They could get on the phone and make a phone call after today's viewing of the Zoom meeting and get on the call and say, you know what, I've been thinking about this, but I think there's some ways that you and I can work together, or we can support each other at work and maybe even start a business. But we have to start thinking differently. And that's something that mindset's going to have to change, because once we do understand it, and we call it lift as you rise. As you rise, you lift another woman up as you go. But it's a habit. It's changing a behavior. It's changing a process of thinking and viewing and understanding. But, you know, we're more than worth it. We're so worth it. So absolutely worth it.
Well, I like the conversation because I do believe, especially with all that's happening, the world is shifting in unimaginable ways, despite all the pain of COVID, despite the conversations around race, despite all the, or not despite, because of all of these things that are happening. There's this light bulb that's going off, and people are becoming so much more aware of, man, there's a whole world, there's a whole community outside of my bubble that I might not even have thought about. And I think obviously this bubble of women, and women really being intentional about paying attention to each other's goals and figuring out, oh, how do I support that goal? And taking going the extra mile, not just what's convenient, but really stepping out there is critical. But for a lot of women listening, they've experienced the mean girl. They've experienced a lot of their challenges in career or business, a lot of their harassment, a lot of their sabotage hasn't come from men. It's actually come from women. I know personal stories around that. People who've literally been managed out because of a nasty boss.
Yeah.
What's that all about? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Mean girls. Yeah. I talk about that a lot in the book, sexual harassment, but also bullying and mean women, mean girls. And where do mean girls come from? They usually come from mean women, being with mean women. So again, we have to start changing the way we're rearing our daughters and our sons. And that's about integrity. That's about community. That's about care for one another. One of the words that are being, I'm hearing more and more of, and I really like this. In fact, I was talking to a gentleman. He wrote a book. He says, more women leaders. That's what we need. I said, boy, he's a smart man. But he said, the word is empathy. Is that we have to find this empathetic side of ourselves to understand, how are other people feeling? How are other people thinking? And when that starts to occur, all the possibilities are there. But again, yeah, there are mean women at work. And I hear, in fact, I know Gloria probably talked to you about this too, but we work with lots of different corporations and take the lead. And it really is disheartening when a young woman who's just going through the ranks of a corporation says, and this is during a very large group meeting, says, what do I do about that mean woman at work? Yeah. What do I do about her? And, we talk about solutions. Well, sometimes by talking to the mean woman, that can help. But sometimes we just have to go all the way around her and find our sponsors, find our allies. And you know what? She's going to shoot herself in the foot, unfortunately. And hopefully something will wake her up and realize she's not being her authentic self. She's not leading with the feminine. She's leading with a leadership style that's really very, very antiquated and really not going to work very much longer in the world as it is today. Yeah. And so the message that I want to bring home, obviously we've all had those experiences. I don't know that I've had mean girls in the corporate space, but I've had mean girls growing up. And those mean girls who looked just like me, but for whatever reason, I was not good enough for their space. That affected how I grew up as a woman, and it affected my relationships with women, and it affected my trust in those relationships well into my 30s. Like I literally had to work very hard to change that, and to change those insecurities that had been born. And so as we think about women supporting women, some of you that are listening, there's some scars that you've got to work through in order to be the person who is willing to not only ask for the help and put yourself out there and be vulnerable, but also the person who's willing to offer the help. Because oftentimes I can't tell you how many times I've offered help, whether it's to younger women, that coming behind, or to peers, and crickets. Like, you don't take advantage of it. You don't leverage it. Like, I'm willing to open the door. Call me. Yeah. Well, but and as I mentioned earlier, likability. Women have this terrible fear of not being liked, and sometimes put up with behavior that is really way beyond the call to say. say the least. But so not everybody's going to like you.
Not
Mm-mm. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to agree with you. And you know what? That's how the world works. And I think that again goes back to being uncomfortable, being comfortable with uncomfortable. And that's something that women need to get used to as well. Not everybody's going to think we're treasures. You know, these helicopter parents, they're sending these kids out in the world that they're not going to be cute and cuddly for long, for as long as they think they're going to be. We all have to come to terms with who we are, but we have to first of all become authentic with ourselves.
Yeah.
Figure out who we are. We have to redesign ourselves like you've done.
Yeah.
Find out really who you are, what brings you joy. And once you find your joy and your happiness, nobody can take it away. Nobody can take it away. Be the you that you were meant to be.
Yeah. I think that's the core message as we begin to land this plane and kind of close out. I love the saying that not everybody's gonna think you're a treasure.
No.
And there are people who should treasure you. Your spouse should treasure you. Your friends should treasure. But everybody's gonna treasure you. And if you're stepping out to create your perfect work, some will, some won't. So what? Got to move on. That does not change the fact, and the experiences that we may have had did not change the fact that we need one another. That if you want to get where you want to go, you've got to be willing to ask for help. You've got to be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations. You've got to be willing to go there, risk the rejection. But in the rejection, there'll be so many gems of support that you'll get that will catapult your success. And then on the flip side, it's being willing to pay that forward, or pay it sideways, or pay it backwards, or whatever, without any expectation that it's going to be reciprocated from you.
Yeah.
Dr. Nancy can give to me. It's irrespective of whether I give back to her, that's going to boomerang and come back from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so you give without that expectation that this person owes back. And it's that willingness to do that with other women that will set the stage for so many more doors to be open for you in your career, your business, your connections, whatever it is that you need. And so that's the foundation that was really intended to come out of this conversation, is to give permission to so much more frequently ask and then be willing to offer. Ask and be willing to offer.
Yep.
And that's the gem that I took out of all that you shared today.
Because remember, we're all in this together.
We're all in this together.
I have heard that saying that's being said over and over throughout written material. I've seen it and I've heard it, and I'm going, this title was just perfect. And I had no idea how wonderful it would be, but we really are. We're in it together. I don't care how you look at it, but since we all are in it together, let's figure out ways to get this thing done. Absolutely. We all want to live. We all want to live in a better world. Yeah. We want to live in a world where we have jobs, we have good communities to live in, and we have good health, and we have happiness. Everybody wants the same thing. So let's all figure out how we're going to get that done. Yeah.
And so Dr. Nancy, I know that you offered a free gift to the listeners for this session.
Well, Lift Women Up. I've got 52 weeks. 52 weeks.
Let me tell us about that.
All right, this is my call to action.
That's your call to action.
Okay, first of all, we must raise our voice to speak up for women whose voices may otherwise not be heard, that are unheard. We must speak kind words to each other, kind words, and encourage one another when we can. We must support each other in our homes, offices, acting as advisor, mentors, and friends. Lift Women Up is just not an idea, it's a movement. Mm-hmm. So you can go to www.liftwomenup.com and you will see a link for a gift of learning 52 weeks of something that every week that you can do to lift women up, including yourself. So do you have that on your
Yeah. So all you have to do is there will be a link at the bottom.
Yeah, there you got it.
Out of the interview, all you have to do is click that link, enter your name and your email address, and you'll be able to get all access to that. Here's the bottom line. Dr. Nancy is the real deal when it comes to advancing women and getting behind their dreams and their goals. And she's connected to such a remarkable tribe of women who do that as well. And so those are the kinds of folks that you want to follow. You want to follow women who are a force for good in the world, because they shine a light that is just so bright that those that are attracted to that light are people that you want to know, people that you want to do business with, people that you want to learn from. And so I highly recommend, if it's only just to connect and follow Dr. Nancy, enter your name, enter your email list, join her email, follow her, because she's a blessing and her life has been a reflection of that. And you haven't had the privilege of listening to people talk about her. I've met some of, her contemporaries, and they speak so highly of her. And so what people say when you're not in the room is so indicative of who you are. And so this one right here, that's a gem. So y'all, yeah, get on that email list and follow her. But it's been such a pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
I think I'll speak for Dr. Nancy and myself as we close out. We wish you all every success, every happiness. Go for the big dream, ask for the help, turn it back around and offer the help, because together I think we can do amazing things. And so with that, we'll wish you well, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.